The Draction swarm had ruled the galaxy for as long as anyone could remember. Their scales glimmered like molten metal. Their claws could tear through starship hulls, and their teeth could crush bone and metal alike. Entire planets had been reduced to barren rocks because of their hunger. No one dared fight them, not even the great empires or the cleverest alien species. To the galaxy, the Draction were untouchable. They were the apex predators of all known space. Every species knew the stories. There were legends of entire fleets disappearing in a single night, a planet stripped bare of life within a single cycle. The Draction were not just hunters, they were death itself. They moved fast, thought fast, and they never made mistakes. To encounter them was to be doomed, and yet in a small corner of the galaxy, far from the Draction's known hunting grounds, a tiny species had quietly been growing. Humans, they were weak. Their ships were small, their weapons primitive compared to the galactic standards. They were barely a blip on the galaxy's radar. But they were survivors. The first Draction attack came quietly. A scouting pack of 5 hunters descended upon Civiton 9, a human colony that was barely 2 decades old. The humans were unaware of the danger. Life on Civiton was simple. Children played in open fields, robots tended the farms, and scientists worked in clean labs trying to unlock the secrets of the stars. Then the sky tore open. The Draction landed with a sound that shook the ground, like mountains falling from the sky. Humans froze. The hunters were enormous, each taller than the largest human buildings. Their eyes glowed with a sharp, predatory light. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They simply attacked. The first humans they found were killed immediately. The Draction tore through the colony like wildfire. Fires burned. Buildings collapsed. People screamed. Panic spread like a virus. But then something unusual happened. Humans did not run Captain Elias Grant. Leader of the small human militia yelled orders over the screaming alarms. Get to the shelters. Use the defenses. Fight back. His voice was calm, firm. The humans responded not with the power of advanced weapons, but with creativity. They barricaded streets. They set traps. They led the Draction into narrow alleys where their size became a disadvantage. The first hunter lunged at a barricade and fell into a pit filled with electrified wires. The second caught fire from a chemical explosion. Humans improvised, combining farming machinery with old energy weapons. And somehow, they began to fight back. The Draction were confused. They had never faced prey that could think so strangely, move so unpredictably, or fight with such stubbornness. To them, humans were nothing more than soft flesh, easy to crush. Yet here, humans were striking back, surviving blows that should have killed them. Captain Grant watched as his people, young and old, pushed back. He knew the odds were terrible, but he also knew something the Draction did not. Humans could endure. Humans could adapt. Humans could surprise. The battle raged for hours. By the end, the Draction had taken casualties. One hunter, the largest of all, lay dead, impaled on a human-built trap. Another was gravely injured. The remaining 3 retreated into the dark of space, leaving Civiton 9 in shock. Humans were alive. Against all predictions, they had survived. Across the galaxy, observers were stunned. Reports came in from distant star systems. Humans survived the Draction. And he laughed at first. It is impossible, said the leaders of the Grand Empires. A single human colony cannot survive against Draction's strength. Yet the news kept coming. The Draction were hunting again. Every time, humans fought back. They did not have the largest fleets, the most advanced technology, or the perfect armor. But they had something more dangerous: unpredictability, courage, and intelligence that the Draction could not anticipate. On the Draction homeworld, the Hive Council gathered. The leaders were massive, their armored bodies forming a terrifying wall of scale and claw. Their voices rumbled like distant storms as they spoke through thought waves. They are small. They are weak. They cannot challenge us, said the first. They fight differently, replied another. They do not fear death. They adapt. They surprise us. This is new. Then they will die, the first snapped. No species survives a swarm. But doubt had entered the Hive Council, and that was dangerous. The Draction had never faced doubt. They had never lost. They had never known fear. Meanwhile, humans were learning. Every encounter taught them something new. Scientists studied the biology of fallen Draction. Soldiers learned the patterns of the hunters. Engineers built new weapons and traps based on human observation and cunning rather than brute strength. On Civiton, Captain Grant gathered his team after the first encounter. "We survived today," he said, "but we must understand them. If we do not learn their patterns, the next attack will destroy us. They are strong, but not invincible. Every species has a weakness. We will find theirs." A young engineer, Mirasolis, spoke up. "We can study their biology, their metabolism, their bones, their reflexes. Maybe we can use that knowledge to design weapons they cannot counter." Grant nodded. "Exactly. Knowledge is our advantage. They rely on strength. We rely on thinking. That is what will keep us alive." In the months that followed, humans built a network of observation posts across nearby star systems. They watched, they learned, they adapted. The galaxy began to whisper. Something strange was happening. The Draction. The apex predators were being challenged, and not by another powerful empire, but by tiny humans. The humans' survival became legend among themselves. But they did not celebrate. They knew each victory was small, temporary. The Draction were relentless. One mistake, one moment of overconfidence, and entire colonies could vanish. Yet humans did not fear. They had learned to fight not as a single organism, but as a network. They used intelligence, courage, and unity. They used strategy where others would use strength. They learned the language of their predator, the rhythm of its attacks. The way it hunted, the way it killed. Captain Grant often walked through the colony at night, observing the quiet hum of human life. Children slept safely in bunkers. Robots patrolled the perimeter. Scientists worked tirelessly, and he realized something that no other species had realized before. Humans were not weak. Humans were dangerous. They were small, yes. Fragile, yes. But they were clever, resilient, and relentless. They could survive anything the Draction threw at them. And for the first time in galactic history, the apex predators might have met their match. The Draction did not yet know it. They would soon. But for now, humans were alive, and that was enough. The galaxy was watching, holding its breath and waiting for the next encounter. And when it came, no one would be prepared for what humans were about to do. The apex predators had met a new kind of hunter. The hunt had just begun. The news traveled faster than any starship could fly. Across the galaxy, from the polished halls of the Xylar Council to the shadowed corridors of the Takari Hive, the story spread. Humans had not only survived the Draction, they had killed them, for millennia. No species had ever struck down a Draction. Entire fleets had been obliterated, civilizations had crumbled, and yet here were humans, standing victorious, alive, and learning from every encounter. Most alien species refused to believe it. "It is impossible," said Governor Lishka of the Triune Sector. "Humans are weak. They are fragile. They cannot kill a Draction." And yet the evidence could not be denied. Video transmissions from Civiton showed the remains of a Draction pack, mangled in ways no other species had ever survived. The humans had set traps. They had lured the hunters into narrow passages, and they had fought with a cleverness that left even the most experienced alien strategists in shock. For the Draction, the defeats were humiliating. In the past, they had only faced predictable opponents, species that feared death, species that relied on brute force, species that obeyed tactics passed down for generations. But humans were different. Humans improvised, adapted, and refused to be predictable. On Civiton, Captain Elias Grant stood before his team. The colony had been rebuilt after the first attack. Defenses strengthened, traps redesigned, and weapons improved. "We know they will return," he said. His voice was calm but firm, a steady rock in a storm. And when they do, we will be ready, not with brute force, but with brains, with courage, and with creativity. That is how we will survive. A young strategist, Jaden Voss, nodded. We've analyzed their attack patterns. We know their hunting rhythm. We've studied their senses and their reflexes. We can anticipate them. We can fight them on our terms. Grant smiled. Good. Knowledge is power. They are the predators. We are the prey. But prey can be dangerous too, especially when it fights back in ways the predator cannot predict. The Draction, meanwhile, were growing restless. Their hive council convened again. The leaders had never faced such persistent failure. They are small. Weak, said one of the hive lords, its voice vibrating like the growl of a dying planet. Yet they kill. How? They fight differently, said another. They do not fear death. They do not flee. They learn, adapt, and strike when we do not expect it. This is new. Third, older than all others, hissed. Then we must exterminate them completely. Send the swarm, leave no trace of their kind. But the council hesitated. Doubt had never existed among the Draction before, and now it took root. For the first time, they were unsure. Back on Civitine, humans continued to prepare. Scientists and engineers worked together, studying Draction biology, discovering weaknesses in their scales and their reflexes. In their hive coordination, one discovery shocked everyone. The Draction hive mind leaders, the apex of their intelligence, were few and vulnerable. Remove them, and the entire pack would lose direction. That was their key vulnerability. Human strategists began designing weapons not to destroy the Draction physically, but to disrupt the hive mind signals, to break the synchronization that made the predators so terrifying. Meanwhile, humans continued to grow bolder. Scout ships ventured further into Draction territory. Humans observed, recorded, and learned. Every encounter, no matter how dangerous, became a lesson. Every loss became a chance to improve. Then came the first real test, a Draction hunting fleet. Larger than any the galaxy had seen, moved toward Civitine, dozens of massive hunters. Each more terrifying than the last, descended on the colony. The humans had no illusions. This was a fight for survival. But they were ready, Captain. Grant coordinated the defenses from the central command hub. Deploy traps, he ordered. Lure them into the canyons. Use the energy grids. Remember what we learned? Move fast. Think faster. The battle began at dawn. The sky was dark with Draction silhouettes. Their claws tore into buildings. Their jaws crushed defenses. But humans were everywhere. Striking unpredictably, retreating when needed, then striking again with surgical precision. A squad led by Lieutenant Kira Chen set up a decoy convoy, drawing several hunters into a canyon lined with explosive traps. When the Draction entered, the canyon lit up with fire and energy blasts. Several hunters fell, their massive bodies crushed under rocks or blown apart. Another team, led by Mira Solis, used new weapons designed to disrupt hive signals. One Draction fell, confused and disoriented, attacking its own packmates in a frenzy. Before being taken down, the humans were not winning by strength, they were winning by strategy. By the end of the day, the Draction had lost a third of their fleet. They retreated, battered and bewildered. Civitine 9 survived. Again, across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear for millennia watched in amazement. If humans could survive the Draction, perhaps there was hope for everyone. Perhaps the predators were not invincible after all. For the Draction, the retreat was more than a tactical failure. It was a blow to their pride, a crack in the legend of their perfection. They had never faced a species that could fight on their terms. They had never faced an opponent that could adapt, survive, and even kill them. On the human side, celebrations were quiet but meaningful. People repaired buildings, healed the wounded, and improved defenses. They knew the Draction would return. They knew the next attack would be worse. But humans had something the Draction could not understand. Hope, courage, ingenuity, Adaptation Captain Grant walked through the battlefield, surveying the aftermath. "They think they are unstoppable," he said softly to his lieutenant. "They have not met humans yet, and when they do, they will see that apex predators can be defeated." Young soldiers nodded. They had seen death, destruction, and terror, but they had also seen victory. Humans were survivors, and survival was in their nature. The galaxy was changing. The Draxian had been the ultimate hunters, untouchable, unchallenged. But now, a new species had entered the game. One that could think differently, adapt quickly, fight in ways the Draxian had never imagined. In the dark corners of the galaxy, other species began to stir. They had watched the humans fight and survive. Some were skeptical, some hopeful, but all knew one thing: the human species was different. They had a spark that no other species possessed, and somewhere deep in the void of space, the Draxian swarm was planning. They had tasted defeat for the first time. Their pride burned, their fury grew. They would return, stronger, deadlier, relentless. But humans were ready, and the galaxy was about to witness a war no one had thought possible. A war where the underdog, the smallest and weakest species, began to challenge the greatest predators the universe had ever known. The humans had learned a lesson the Draxian would never forget: intelligence, courage, and creativity could beat brute strength. The hunt had escalated, and now the hunters would have to learn to fear. The Draxian were furious. Never in their history had a species dared to fight back, and never had a species killed their hunters so efficiently. For countless cycles, they had ruled the galaxy with unmatched strength. But humans, fragile, unpredictable, and clever, had shattered that image. Across human space, the victories were small but significant. Colonies once considered remote and vulnerable were now fortified, not only to survive, but to strike back. Scientists, engineers, and soldiers worked together with a single purpose: study the enemy, exploit every weakness, and survive. Captain Elias Grant knew that survival alone was not enough. Humans could endure, yes, but endurance without action was meaningless. The Draxian were spreading, attacking other human colonies, testing defenses, killing thousands. But with each attack, humans learned. Every strategy, every weapon, every failure became a lesson. On Civitan, the central hub buzzed with activity. Holomaps displayed the movement of Draxian fleets. Data streams revealed hunting patterns, predator communication signals, and weak points in their massive armored bodies. Lieutenant Kira Chen pointed at the map. "They're repeating a pattern from last month. Every fleet moves in a triangular formation, 3 leading hunters with support from the rest. If we strike the leaders first, the rest lose coordination." Grant nodded. "Exactly. That is their flaw. They rely on rigid structure, predictable structure, and we can exploit it." Humans were not fighting like any other species in the galaxy. They didn't rely on brute strength, overwhelming numbers, or raw firepower. They relied on strategy, adaptability, and speed. Every small team had autonomy. Every scientist had input into the battle plans. Every civilian was part of the effort. Meanwhile, the Draxian were growing desperate. Their hive mind leaders could sense the disruption, but they could not locate the source. Humans moved unpredictably. They fought in ways no predator had ever encountered. The Draxian were fast, strong, and lethal, but humans were smarter. It was during one of these escalating skirmishes that humanity began to spread its influence. Humans ventured into neutral systems, sharing intelligence with other species. They taught them to exploit Draxian weaknesses, trap placement, ambush tactics, and signals disruption. The galaxy had lived in fear for thousands of cycles, but now hope was spreading. Allied fleets began to form, led by humans. Using new tactics that the Draxian could not anticipate, the first joint operation was daring. A Draxian hunting fleet had approached a neutral planet rich in resources. Humans and allies set a trap. Using knowledge of Draxian movement, they constructed energy nets, magnetic traps, and decoy convoys. Captain Grant led the operation. "We are not attacking blindly," he said. "We are teaching them that humans are not prey. We are showing them that they can be defeated." When the Draxian fleet arrived, chaos erupted. The leading hunters charged, expecting compliance and fear. Instead, they encountered ambushes from multiple directions. Explosions tore through their ranks. Humans struck at the leaders, breaking hive coordination. Confused hunters turned on one another. The fleet collapsed in hours. For the first time, a Draxian fleet had been completely destroyed not because of power, but because of human thinking, planning, and teamwork. The victory sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Other species, once timid and oppressed, began to rise. With human guidance, small fleets and colonies began to fight, using strategies humans had developed. They were not just defending, they were taking the fight to the Draxian. Back on Civitan-9, Captain Grant watched the reports. His people had suffered casualties, but their victories were undeniable. "We are changing the balance," he said quietly. "The Draxian have ruled unchallenged for too long. That ends now." Myra Solis, now a senior engineer, added, "We've learned their biology, their patterns, even their communication. We can disrupt their hive coordination entirely. Soon, they will be vulnerable everywhere." But the Draxian were not finished. Desperation made them more dangerous. They began launching total war campaigns, attacking multiple colonies simultaneously. Entire systems burned. Human fleets were stretched thin. Civilians hid in shelters as Draxian hunters tore through the skies, yet humans adapted. They learned to anticipate attacks, to respond faster, and to strike strategically rather than reactively. Each battle taught them more, and with every victory, humanity inspired the galaxy to rise against the Dr. X. In one decisive encounter, a massive Draxian fleet attacked the human stronghold of Nova Prime. Hundreds of hunters and dozens of hive leaders descended to crush the planet. Human forces were outnumbered 10-1. Yet they had studied, prepared, built defenses specifically to counter this attack. Energy nets suspended in orbit slowed the fleet's movement. Decoy convoys drew groups of hunters into deep space traps. Laser grids cut off retreat paths. Human strike teams targeted hive leaders with precision. Weapons designed to sever their hive-mind connection. The Draxian hunters panicked. Without coordination, they became vulnerable. Fleet after fleet fell apart. Humans struck relentlessly, taking advantage of every mistake. Within hours, the attackers had been shattered, their survivors retreating in confusion and terror. The victory at Nova Prime was more than a tactical success. It was proof that humans could not only survive the apex predators, but defeat them consistently. Across the galaxy, species whispered stories of humans, the small species that had learned to turn fear into strength. Even the Draxian homeworld felt the tremors. Hive lords grew uneasy. They had never lost consistently before. They had never faced prey that learned, adapted, and fought back. The humans were unpredictable, relentless, and dangerous. For the first time, apex predators feared extinction. Captain Grant looked out from his command center, the galaxy alive with news of victory and survival. "We are not the strongest," he told his officers. "We are not the fastest or the biggest, but we are the ones who survive, adapt, and fight when it matters most. That is why we will win." In the dark reaches of space, the Draxian prepared for a final push, gathering every fleet, every hunter, every leader. They would unleash total war, aiming to crush humanity before it could spread further. But humans were ready. They had learned, adapted, and grown stronger with every encounter. With allies across the galaxy, humans had built something no predator could ignore: a coalition, strategy, and an unbreakable spirit. The war was far from over. The Draxian had been the galaxy's apex predators for millennia. But now, a new force had emerged. Humans, small and fragile, had turned the tide. They had not only survived, they had taught the galaxy to fight back, and the predators, once feared by all, were beginning to understand a terrifying truth: the hunters could be hunted. The galaxy held its breath. A final confrontation loomed on the horizon, and when it came, no one, not even the Draction, would be prepared for the determination, courage, and ingenuity of humanity. The war had escalated to a level no species had ever imagined. The apex predators were learning fear, and humans, once considered weak, were ready to become the new apex. The Draction had never faced a threat like this. For millennia, their dominance was absolute. Entire civilizations had fallen before their claws and teeth. Every star system knew fear at the mention of their name. But now, they were gathering every hunter, every fleet, and every hive leader for a single, desperate strike, the final campaign against humanity, the Draction homeworld. A burning, jagged planet in the dark reaches of the galaxy served as the heart of their hive. From there, every command was given, every hunt coordinated, and every attack perfected. The Hive Lords had learned humility for the first time. Humans had killed their hunters, destroyed their fleets, and survived encounters that no other species could endure. "Prepare the swarm," the oldest Hive Lord commanded, its voice like a thunderclap across the psychic network. "This species will not survive our fury. We will end them, every colony, every ship, every last human." The Draction amassed a fleet larger than any the galaxy had ever seen. Thousands of hunters, each more terrifying than the last, filled the void. Hive leaders coordinated attacks across multiple systems simultaneously. They were determined. They were merciless. They believed victory was assured, and yet humans were ready, across human space. Captain Elias Grant stood before the unified fleet of humans and their allies. Planets and colonies from every corner of the galaxy had contributed forces. Every alien species that had once trembled before the Draction now fought alongside humanity, inspired by the humans' courage, ingenuity, and resilience. Grant addressed the fleet over the COM networks. "They believe we are weak. They believe their strength is absolute. But they have never faced humans before. They have never faced our ingenuity, our determination, our unity. Today, the hunters will become the hunted." Human engineers had worked tirelessly to create new technology specifically for this battle. Weapons to disrupt the hive mind signals of the Draction. Traps to channel their immense strength into vulnerability. Coordinated fleets designed to strike at the leaders first, creating chaos in the swarm. Lieutenant Kira Chen and her team led the vanguard. "We hit their leaders first. Once the hive mind breaks, the rest fall apart. Timing is everything. Precision is everything. And humans. Humans never quit." As the massive Draction fleet approached human space, stars seemed to darken under their sheer numbers. Yet humans did not falter. They had learned from every encounter, adapted to every challenge, and trained for this moment. The first clash occurred near the edge of the Orion expanse. Hundreds of hunters charged toward human defenses, confident in their dominance. Yet they walked into a trap unlike any they had seen. Energy nets suspended in space slowed their advance. Magnetic fields twisted their paths. Decoy convoys lured them into ambush zones where human and allied forces struck from multiple angles. "Captain," Grant monitored every move. Now he commanded human strike teams, using their knowledge of Draction biology, targeted the hive leaders. Disruption devices severed their psychic coordination. Confused and disoriented, the hunters began attacking each other. Their flawless strategy crumbled under human ingenuity. For every hunter destroyed, humans pressed further. For every colony threatened, humans coordinated rapid defense, striking back with precision and intelligence. The Draction, once apex predators, were falling like dominoes in the heart of the battle. Myra Solus oversaw the deployment of a new weapon. It emitted a resonance specifically tuned to Draction's sensory perception. The effect was immediate. Hunters froze, confused, and weakened. Strike teams moved in, taking down the massive predators with coordinated assaults. Even the Hive Lords, creatures older and stronger than any human, were vulnerable. Grant's plan focused on the leaders first. Once separated from the swarm, they were no longer invincible. With every Hive Lord eliminated, the swarm lost control, and the apex predators became disorganized, panicked, and easy prey. Across the galaxy, the humans' allies witnessed this. The sight of Draction hunters falling before smaller, seemingly weaker forces shattered centuries of fear. The tide of the war had turned decisively. The final assault on the Draction homeworld was both daring and precise. Human forces, accompanied by their allies, stormed the planet in coordinated waves. Energy grids immobilized hunters attempting to defend their leaders. Decoy signals drew fleets away from critical zones. Boarding parties struck at hive complexes. Targeting the command centers, Captain Grant led one of the key boarding teams personally. With Lieutenant Chen at his side, they moved through the jagged corridors of the hive's surface, fighting hunters that were still terrifying in size and ferocity. But humans had learned to adapt. They moved strategically, striking at weak points and coordinating their attacks flawlessly. The hive leaders were finally cornered. Despite their immense size and strength, they could not survive against a force that had learned, adapted, and prepared. One by one, they fell. The psychic connection that had once controlled the swarm shattered. Chaos erupted. Across the planet and in orbit, the Draction swarm collapsed. Hunters attacked one another, fleets became directionless, and the once unstoppable apex predators were reduced to disorganized, vulnerable creatures. The humans and their allies pressed the advantage, ensuring no Draction could regroup. Finally, silence fell. The Draction, once feared across the galaxy, were no more. Their homeworld was empty of the predators that had terrorized countless civilizations. The galaxy, for the first time in millennia, was free of the apex hunters. Captain Grant and his officers watched from orbit. The battle was over. Humans had survived against impossible odds, adapted when challenged, and turned the tide against creatures that had been unbeatable for millennia. History will remember this, Grant said softly. They thought they were the ultimate hunters. They were wrong. Humans. Humans survived, and humans prevailed. Across the galaxy, civilizations celebrated. Planets that had once cowered before Draction fleets now stood free. Humanity had shown that intelligence, courage, and determination could defeat even the most fearsome predators. But the victory was more than just survival. Humans had changed the balance of power. They were no longer merely a fledgling species in the corner of the galaxy. They were leaders, innovators, and symbols of hope. The story of the humans who defeated the apex predators spread to every star system, inspiring countless species to rise against oppression and fear. On Civiton 9, Captain Grant walked through the quiet streets after the war. Survivors rebuilt, children played safely, and scientists explored new technologies harvested from the battle. Humans had faced extinction and turned it into victory. Mira Solis stood beside him, looking out at the stars. "We were small," she said. "We were weak compared to them, but we never gave up. We adapted. We survived. That is what made the difference." Grant nodded. "And that is what humans always do. We survive. We fight. We rise. That is our nature." The galaxy would never forget the lesson. The apex predators, once untouchable, had fallen, and the humans, resilient, courageous, and unpredictable, had become the new apex not through sheer strength, but through ingenuity, determination, and heart. The Draction were gone. The galaxy was safe, and humanity had earned its place among the stars, not as prey, but as a species worthy of respect, fear, and admiration. The hunt had ended, and for once the hunters were hunted. The apex predators were dead, and humanity, small and fragile once, stood triumphant.